last year's espresso.
We did a year of gymnastics, and then, or summer ago, she was like,
it's all good. I can always be
I really want people to have it now.
then she should try hip-hop.
That's what she's doing.
Yeah, she wants
I'm gonna dial this person in, and then I'm gonna
She just likes
some copies. So it has those comments, but not the rest.
That's why I don't do the false copy.
It's really funny.
Because there's no show, it's just how we're directed.
Lisa Brooks.
Meanwhile, she's got conventions and competitions as well.
I think she works for the American Heart Association.
Oh, yeah,
She's
yeah,
like the point person.
She doesn't want to play.
Oh yeah. Oh, actually.
She's like, it's cool. I won't let her do like ballet tech and stuff like that. Dance schools, I sent her, I need to build an engineer.
1 second, I put down the number somewhere.
Is it this 818 number?
My son's
I can't get an original.
She was kind of like your
Styles changed.
Yeah.
She's on their dance team, or maybe cheerleading dance team.
Yeah. Exactly.
He's for the they're nice. It's a nice little. It might take all the gifts. It might reimburse you.
I doubt it. That's why, like, pretty much anything he asks for, I'm like, how much is it? Okay, fine.
I find everything's $50 a class.
Thank you for that email, by the way, Betty. It was, holy crap, the amount of historical knowledge you provided to me on this issue of e-bikes was holy mackerel. So, that was awesome, thank you.
I have
50, right?
never
50?
really relied upon
Yeah.
my presentation.
Yeah, but, and so it's prorated, so like the last classes that 20 takes, they're like at 70.
I've usually used my written skills call.
Actually, free tomorrow.
That puts me over the edge.
No.
She loves it. I don't know if I'm.
Go grab pizza.
I took away her after school at school.
My written
It's actually the same one written in there.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Later,
Sorry, so I
later.
did that because I need to eat gluten-free pizza.
I don't know.
Can't do
I
it.
haven't had
20 chose dance
You said,
over everything
told me you
else.
were a really good writer.
Yep.
And she's on a competition team, she really likes
Yeah,
it.
no, actually, that's the one.
Oh, sweet.
Best hit,
My last class.
not the
No,
worst hit.
April
Oh,
discussed.
sweet.
You don't want to be
Cool, so let's tentatively plan, let's tentatively plan for
I'm like,
7.
I'm
I
fine
don't
with
Is
that.
that okay? Is that too late? Too early?
going to
7
be
is fine.
good at any of this. That's
Yeah,
fine, but she loves it, so that's.
So, the 7th.
That was a PS.
At the end of the day, the answer is
Never,
always,
but I did
are you
have a
happier
couple
versus
of
unhappy?
and it was
And that's how you
this?
work it.
That's
Oh, awesome.
It
Yeah,
never
but that
could.
doesn't count for math.
Yes, it does.
Well, but she, you know,
Yeah,
She has a point. It doesn't
she makes some of my things make sense.
Yes, she's a great athlete.
She's very good.
Hmm?
She's right. If I didn't have personality writing, never write it.
Yeah. Okay. You need an editor. Newspaper.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com.
Oops, that's not it.
You entered 62325 If this is correct, press 1. To re-enter your access code, press 2. Please enter your access code followed by the pound.
There's something into that tug-off.
Yeah, we did a summer up there, my older daughter, she loved it.
62325
I think it's better when you
If
go
this
with a
is
friend.
correct, press 1.
I was
There is
actually
one
thinking
other
about
phone
it for a
in the
concert.
I've
conference.
not done it after school, I
Sure.
did it for
Announce
summer stuff,
yourself.
it was fun. I think
Community Word 1.
Family.
try and do it for her.
Thanksgiving.
No, I'm not a holiday. That's too much.
It blends really well.
Hi, Lisa, you there?
Musical theater.
Oh. Hello, anyone on?
Hi, it's
Oh.
Nicole Dirigirio from Eventage. My colleague Lisa will definitely be joining us.
Okay, cool. Hey, so it was Nicole, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great, Nicole, thanks. It's Reggie Thomas here in Devonshire. Thanks again, along with our other committee members.
Great.
Do you have an idea about when Lisa might be hopping on?
Hang on 1 second. Let me
Cool.
see. I thought she was on before, so let me see. Maybe she just got disconnected. Hold on 1 second.
Sorry.
Cool, sounds good. So I put it on mute for a second. Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start officially the Transportation Committee meeting. We have 5 or 6 items on the agenda for today. The first item we're actually going to be talking about is the street activity permit application for the American Heart Association Wall Street Run. It was an item that was heard at last month's meeting, but due to quorum issues, we actually wanted to rehear it again. And since that time, we actually had a number of questions and comments that came in about it. So we just wanted to have an opportunity for the applicant to discuss some of the concerns that were raised last year when this item was heard in a different
Yeah, I
committee.
just sent Lisa a text message, and she said she's on, but she doesn't hear anything. She might have, maybe she typed in the wrong access code or something. I'm going to send her the call-in information again and see if that'll help.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, I have it on mute, so it's okay. And normally we would have the applicant come in, but because we'd asked them to come in again and due to a scheduling issue, they weren't able to come, but understanding sort of the importance of this, we wanted to make sure that they were at minimum on the phone to chat about this item. And then right after this one, we will have Pace University go up. Again, this is a rehearing from last month, and then we'll talk about some of the other items on the agenda. All right.
Hi, it's Lisa Brooks.
Okay, great. We have Lisa and Nicole on from the applicant. So this is, thank you again for both of you for calling in. I know we heard this application last month, but we appreciate you hopping on the phone to discuss some of the questions and concerns that arose since our meeting last month. So this is the Transportation Committee. Next to me is Devin Chu, and we have a number of, who's co-chair of the committee, and we have a number of committee members here. I won't go through the roll call just so we can kind of hop in.
But there is a quorum.
But there is a quorum this time, so.
Okay.
So just for reference, we do have a map of the route up, and then we also want to just talk a little bit about some of the concerns that were raised at last year's application, as well as some of the comments we heard since the hearing last month. So just for everyone in the room, so they know, the American Heart Association has the Wall Street Run and Heart Walk. It's scheduled for Thursday, May 16th, 2019. The official hours from 6 to 7 p.m., although there will be some, there will be street closures beforehand and some breakdown afterwards. This is an application, or this is an event that's happened for, I believe, well over 20 years or so. And it's something that, of course, Lower Manhattan we're proud to have. However, in last year's resolution, there were some concerns that were raised about traffic and congestion. And specifically, Nicole and Lisa, just in terms of a reminder of what was approved last January, the community board in their resolution noted that they reluctantly recommended approval of this specific application, but they said in the future CB1 must be presented with an NYPD traffic mitigation plan. Two, provisions must be made to allow for people to get home and to work. And the third was some concerns that were raised regarding Hanover Square and that the fact that the event takes place during rush hour on a weekday. So that's sort of just the initial concerns that were raised from last year. Since our hearing last month, we also heard concerns from specifically some community board members and some of our neighbors in Lower Manhattan. So what I'd like to do is, just for your benefit, to have some of the committee members talk about some of the concerns they had with this application, and then also have an opportunity for you to hear from any of our neighbors that are here, just so you can kind of get a lay of the land. At that point, then we'd love to turn it over back to you for you to respond to any comments or questions about some of the concerns that were raised. Does that sound okay?
That's great, thanks.
Awesome, sounds good. So, I don't know, like Tammy, you're phenomenal at this, or Liz, or anyone else, if you want to give a general overview of some of the concerns that you each had.
So I think I'm going to go back to working on the comments and the therefore be it resolved from the former. I appreciate the times of the run, but the times of the run do not also coincide with the street closures that happen, nor this year for the amount of construction traffic that's actually construction projects being done in Lower Manhattan. So traffic is a major issue because all of the east-west access between Battery Park City and Lower Manhattan is shut down, and the only north-south access that you can go is pushed to the edges, which burdens West Street incredibly because obviously you're on Church. And I wondered a couple things. Firstly, have you considered using any of the East River Promenade, which is off the course, more extensively to be able to mitigate some of the traffic issues? Because this race affects almost all of the handicapped accessible transportation that goes into Battery Park City, the downtown connection, the M9, the M20, the M55 that goes down Church. So it affects a huge swath of, M55 goes down Broadway, sorry. A huge swath of transportation and makes it, basically they close down for the afternoon at rush hour.
And then, sorry, Elizabeth, you want to?
I just want, can you just clarify what changes have been made since last year, if any?
Alright, and then, so, for the applicants on the phone, so the two major questions that were asked, or the first overall statement was made about just the general congestion and the traffic closures and some of the impediments from that. But the two overarching questions that were first asked were, in terms of the route, whether the American Heart Association considered changing the route to include a lot of the East River Promenade, which would still let you hit your 3-miler, but also relieve some of the congestion issues we're facing on the west side of Lower Manhattan. And then the second question is, what, if any, changes were made from last year's run?
Great, thanks. So yeah, we have considered the East River Promenade and looked into that last year after our meeting. The problem is we have 10,000 participants, and they take up quite a lot of space. So it would necessitate the roads being closed for even longer, because putting them onto the promenade would create a bottleneck that would back into the streets. So one of the things that we've done since last year, and Diana, I don't know if you've have the map printed out with the different colors that we made.
Yep, we have it.
It was really, okay, perfect. Really working with NYPD to identify and quickly close and reopen streets for the most limited amount of time that we could. So in a lot of cases, we're talking about 45 minutes to an hour that the streets are closed. They're not closed for the full 6 to 8 in the most cases. So as far as changes from last year, the NYPD still recommends this route, as it's the one that they're best able to still move traffic using West Street, using, the tunnel, getting people around the FDR. And for that reason, we haven't changed the route from last year. But I was hoping in providing this map that we could kind of see more detail as to when actual streets are closed. I know there's concern was raised about east-west access, and I don't know if Chambers is an alternative that would help with that. I know it's a little bit further north than Thorne or Murray, but that remains open during the event as well.
That is the only two-way traffic street in Lower Manhattan, so that that connects east to west all the way, so to the Brooklyn Bridge. So I don't think that that's a viable option.
And then just to segue a little bit, so we do have some folks, some of our neighbors from Lower Manhattan who want to just talk a little bit about their experiences. So it may be helpful for you folks on the phone just to hear. So one of our neighbors, Nick, do you want to talk about?
Reggie, what was the answer to the question about using the east side more?
They said that they would. They said sure. They said because they have 10,000 people, it would have created a bottleneck on the East River.
Right.
So anyway, that was their response. Sorry. And then Nick, do you want to?
So I'd like to sort of, point of information.
Yeah, sure.
Understanding, when you talk about the East River Esplanade, right, there are streets in addition to the East River Esplanade that can be used, right? It goes all the way up to Basketball City, and nobody's ever on that street with regard to a start and a stop. My concern is this. I still have PTSD from living this and experiencing it last year. All I was trying to do was get my kids to Little League practice. It was horrific.
Nick, do you want to talk about the specific streets for them on the phone so they
I live on Chambers and Broadway. I was trying to go down Murray Street. I was trying to get home from work to be able to, specifically, driving down West Broadway. I never drive to work except for during baseball practices because I have all the equipment in my car, and I take my kids to school early on that Thursday morning. And so I'm driving with all the baseball equipment down West Broadway. I have an entire team filled with kids, 30, 40 kids between two different teams that I coach, and literally all of the traffic is backed up all the way up West Broadway, all the way back up to practically the tunnel. I don't understand why. I have lived in New York City my entire life. I'm born and raised on the Upper East Side. I've chosen to live in Tribeca because it's an amazing community and an amazing environment. I don't understand why we would choose to treat ourselves as second-class citizens in this city. I've never, ever seen any other part of the city shut down during rush hour on a Thursday afternoon for a not-for-profit that is, I'm sure, doing incredible things for incredible people. And I don't want to feel guilty about the fact that I'm complaining about this, but the fact is that there are other ways to do this, that if they want to do this, now that there are tens of thousands of people, more than 20 years ago, that live, work, play baseball, go to work, go home, you have to deal with New York City. It is hard enough to live in this city. There are so many logistics and so many things to try to be able to overcome, and to just, it is an absolute slap in the face to have to deal with this on a Thursday afternoon. It's ridiculous. And there are a lot of solutions. There's no reason why South Street can't be shut down. Like, why can't we be going up past the Manhattan Bridge and starting up at Basketball City? Plenty of places. Just because it's a bunch of Wall Streeters who want to be able to roll out of work and be able to get there, if they do runs uptown, they do them in the park, and they shut down the park. And by the way, there are no more cars allowed in the park anymore. They do that all the time. Why are we volunteering for this?
So, Lisa, Nicole, just so as you can probably hear, there's there's frustration, and I'm probably not doing justice in terms of Nick's comments about sort of the concerns with, even though we understand the route really hasn't changed much during the time, the population has exploded in Lower Manhattan, and in terms of a capacity issue, there's definitely some concern about the route itself. I don't know if you have any comments
and participants in the run have probably, the number of participants have probably exploded as well, making this even more burdensome.
So do you want to just talk a little bit about alternatives you've considered outside of the East River Esplanade? Have you considered major changes to the route? You can maybe talk about sort of how the numbers of the overall race have changed over the time of the race since its inception.
Sure, and I apologize, I couldn't hear that last woman who spoke, but in general, like you said, the route hasn't changed much in the last 20 years, and I believe the number of people entering has stayed the same. I definitely hear the concerns for, people who live in the area, as well as your population, which has grown. I would say, it is 45 minutes for the most part that a lot of it's shut down. So I know that it's a lot to ask, and I know that it affects people's lives. We do our best to get the message out that this is going to be happening, so people can plan for alternative routes and alternative transportation. We have flyers that we send out, and we like to post it on your website. We post it on the New York City website. So I definitely understand the frustration, but I would say, just like you said, it is a really good cause, and we're able to raise the amount of money we do because of the area of town that it's in.
So just to follow up specifically about the specific areas that are being closed. So I see, for example, on Liberty Street it says 6:32 to 7:17. Is that really is it really only 45 minutes? Because that seems much shorter than what really happens in practice.
No, this is what we have worked on with NYPD. We have the notes from last year, so we took really accurate notes of when the street was first closing. It's a rolling closure, so earlier before that, where you see Warren and Church, it says closed from 6:32 to 7:15. Streets that are further back are even opening before 7:15. So these are general blocks that we were able to capture, in the moment. So they don't start shutting streets down until they absolutely have to, and then they reopen them right behind the last person that's participating in the event.
In the official application, it notes that the start time, quote unquote, is 3:30, including setup, and then 6 o'clock not including setup. What's happening, I guess, between 3:30 and 6? Are there street closures? Is there any congestion that's brewing? Could you talk us through that a bit more?
Sure. So that includes our whole application, which also takes place at Brookfield Place. no, as far as street closures, the only street closure that starts is at 5 p.m., and that's on Warren and Murray Streets. I'm sorry, Greenwich and Murray Streets. Use those streets to start setting up the start line. Those are only closed to vehicles, not pedestrians. And they're closed for 2 hours for setup and breakdown.
Which means they're closed to public transportation.
And the times that the event is not happening, so before and after 6:30 to 7, West Broadway remains open, Warren remains open, West Street obviously and Vesey. So those two streets are the ones that have been identified that would have the least impact on like cross traffic and other vehicular movement. So that's the longest closure for any place in the area is from 5 to 8 for 2 hours on those two streets.
Actually, I have to disagree with you because being a Battery Park City resident, they close Battery Place to West Thames starting around 4:30, and it remains closed, as you note on here, until about 8:06. NYPD comes down and closes them. The latest it's ever been closed was 5 o'clock. And so it's closed for 3 hours with zero access to public transportation for buses, cars, anything.
Yeah, I'll definitely bring that back up to NYPD because West Thames shouldn't be affected at all. It should remain open the whole time. So I'll put that question to them and see if they can change anything on their end.
But it affects Battery Place, which is why they closed from the edge of West Thames.
Right, then no one can turn right onto it.
Right. So they closed down parts of West Thames to help buffer your access on Battery Place, which completely shuts down that entire neighborhood area. So there's no school bus access to get kids around, et cetera, between 5 and 8.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you live there, you know better than I am basing this off of the report from the officer, so I can go back to them and see if we can get more accurate details, but this is the time that they have from last year in their report as to what every street was closed, so that's what I'm basing this on. The other thing I just want to mention is, this is a race of 10,000 people. We have runners and walkers. We never put barricades on the streets, and as far as pedestrian traffic, we try to get pedestrian traffic, which a lot of the traffic at this time is. I mean, obviously there's a ton of vehicles that used to commute through the area at that time, but people are able to make crossings. If you're in, I know Hanover Square is an area of concern. Once like the very fast runners come through, it's very, a leisurely walk, so people can cross the street. It's not a barricaded like marathon or anything like that, or bike race.
All right. We have just a few more questions. Nick, do you want to?
Yeah,
Sure.
the part that I don't understand is, like, it feels as if this is going in reverse right now. Listen, I don't know how community boards necessarily work, necessarily. But why are we, when I spoke to the police officers who were there, and by the way, there were seemingly hundreds of police officers all over the place that were stopping people from walking, from driving, from getting access to, in fact, I had to beg to get down to my street to be able to drop one of my kids off, to be able to get another kid, to be able to go pick him up and then take him back to baseball practice when I was still trying to navigate through the whole mess. Why are we, how much does it cost? How much are you paying the police officers, and why are we making our decision based on what the police say? Why aren't we just making our decision? We should be figuring out whether this is a good thing for us. What are we getting out of this? I don't think we get anything out of this. We're just doing it because we've always done it. This has gotten way too big, and there are way too many important travel routes that are completely being disturbed in the worst time of the day. Why, it's not about a question of going back to the police. It's a question of what do we want to do? If they want to do something in our neighborhoods, we should be telling them, this is the only way that you'll be able to do it. You're not going to, we know that we have a very valuable piece of real estate that you can raise a lot of money off of. Okay, under XYZ circumstances, we will let you do it. And if you don't want to do it, that's it. That should be the decision. It shouldn't be a question of, oh, we've done it for 20 years, or
what is the best, most efficient way the police are willing to do it. It's a question of what are we willing to do as a community?
So I'm going to just step in at this point just to kind of take a step back and explain process and how, generally how this has worked in the past. So as with any street activity application, any permit, any closures, it's an application technically to the city and not to our community board for our approval, yes or no. I think if it was to our community board, we wouldn't probably approve any of them. But it's an application technically to the city as a whole. And then city refers it to us for our thoughts and opinions. We are not the final arbiter on this. It's our job to give recommendations and to give thoughts and things of that nature related to this. That's why we pass a resolution on it. I'll speak for myself here in the sense that New York City as a whole is an ecosystem where there are events that, frankly, I would prefer they didn't happen in our community, but then I also enjoy events in other parts of the city that I know other community boards will probably always vote no on as well. And so it's a give and take on this stuff. And in terms of our role as a community board, there's obviously a lot of agitation here about this. It's clear that it's causing hell for some of our neighbors, especially you, Nick. It's clear that's the case as well. So it's our job to, one, first express clearly what our issues are. Two, actually hold both the applicant and the city accountable. And something that didn't happen last year that I would like to happen this year is no matter what happens with this, if it does happen or doesn't happen in May, assuming it does happen in May, we should be having a serious follow-up with the applicant and with NYPD as a community to say, we need this route to change. And it's something that I don't think Community Board 1 has actually formally requested of or had a follow-up meeting or actually sat down with the applicant following the meeting outside of doing this resolution. So I hear you on everything you're saying. I just want to give you sort of a 50,000-foot level of why we're reviewing it this way. And I gotta tell you, if we had a choice as a community, we would probably say no to most things. And I have a feeling that we as a board probably want to say no to this as well. And we should be citing everything that you're saying in terms of the impact it has on families who are just trying to do basic things on a rush hour on Thursday. We should absolutely be including this and having conversations with the city about it. So that's my 2 cents on it. Mark?
I think you hit the nail on the head about just because we've been doing it's been the same route for 20 years doesn't mean it should be the same route every year.
Yep.
The neighborhood has completely changed in many ways between the construction, the influx of residents. That we should reject this route in our resolution and request a new route. I mean, there is no reason why the finish and the start can't be the same location. So I would, in the resolution, say that no streets should be closed between Pearl and West Street. So in other words, the route can be this. Where the finish is, you start, go down Battery Park, go up Water Street, go down Pearl, cut back into Water Street, and go back to Battery
And loop
Park.
back around.
Yeah.
That closes Battery Park City off then for 5 hours instead of 3.
Yeah, I know. I know that, but the
You got kids and
nightmare
buses.
congestion of closing Greenwich, Warren, Church, William, Liberty, in this day and age is just unacceptable. That just can't happen anymore. If it's a Saturday or Sunday, different story. But we just cannot let that happen anymore. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Elizabeth?
No, I mean, we have problems with a 5-borough bike tour, and that's on a Sunday, Saturday or Sunday, right?
Right.
And that
Yeah.
causes us tremendous amount of grief and stress. I mean, this is a whole nother ballgame because it's during the week.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to vote no on this, but listen, I think it's a great event, but I really encourage the applicant to kind of work with us and work with the NYPD to make changes that basically mitigate all these effects on all these problems on the community. It's really not. I mean, it's just not fair to everybody bearing this burden.
So we are approaching minute 28 on this one item. So I just want to see if there's any final comments on this before we.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
The Battery Park City closure that's going along Battery Park City, that's West Street that's closed?
It's the bottom of Battery Place from West Thames all the way around the bottom. So there's, if you're not going through the underpass, there is no access to Lower Manhattan.
Those arrows, is that West Street or is that?
It's along the water.
Battery Place and the Esplanade.
It's Battery Place.
To the Esplanade.
So they're running down Battery Place. And how is that closing off what were you saying, because I'm
The
concerned about.
M20 and, oh, so if you were busing kids to 276,
Which we do.
right, you would not be able to get them to 276, because if you come down West Street and take that right on Battery Place is closed.
So Battery
And
Place
it
is
is
closed
just
from what
closed
time to what
eastbound.
time?
I know that might not.
Sorry, Lisa
help,
Nicole,
but
say that
it's
again.
just westbound.
Sorry.
It is just closed westbound, which I'm not sure of where
I'm sorry.
276 is, but I don't know if that helps.
They close all of Battery Place. There's not one.
Battery Place, yeah, sorry, Battery Place, the other leading streets to Water and State
And
legally
they
eastbound.
close Battery Place, where it's purple on the thing, around the horn, they close that too.
Correct.
And that does not allow cars or vehicles
Westbound.
westbound or eastbound on Battery Place, so it's a two-way, even though the arrow deceivingly says it's going one way. That's the one way for the runners. But, so, the closure of cars between, at these times, is a pain. The pedestrian issues are not that severe, because I deal with a lot of parents.
They wouldn't let me walk down the street with my kid. The police wouldn't let me.
What street?
Right around Murray. I live on Chambers Street. They wouldn't let me. They wouldn't even let me get home. They wouldn't even let me walk
Between
to my
where and where? On the sidewalk?
Warren and Murray, in between, from the edge of
Church
West
and
Broadway.
Chambers,
to
or Church
Wait, you were
and Broadway
I
on
just-
Chambers. They wouldn't let me down Murray Street. They wouldn't let me down Warren Street.
And this is
The
when
police
they have,
refused to let me go down.
so
I-
when she says she's going back to the NYPD to see if they're okay with it, this is what
Yeah.
they.
The NYPD is
So
going to do
please
whatever.
let me finish, please.
Actually, wait,
Yeah,
Bob
they-
didn't even finish. Hold on.
So
I thought he finished.
That's all right.
handle hundreds and hundreds of parents at that time of the day. And I've been always very concerned with this event. And surprisingly, until this gentleman said something, I wouldn't want to be driving a car there, that's for sure. I mean, I don't know what you can do about that. But I have not had that much problems. Now, I take you at your word that you couldn't get down Murray. We're at Warren between West and Greenwich, and we're at Battery Place between Baba and Baba. And
You do no bus service to 276 on Thursdays.
we do bus service.
You do
up
not,
there. I
not
do
anymore.
I should really know what I'm
You
doing.
actually canceled bus service 2 years ago from the run.
And what days do I do bus service on Tuesdays?
On Thursdays,
I have 900 employees.
on Thursdays you service Spruce and Peck.
Okay, so Spruce and Peck, we haven't had an issue. We've gotten in by whatever way we have. There's been no issue, but I could go back and check that with my staff.
You canceled programming that day.
So,
No, I don't think we did.
so thanks for the insight, Bob, especially given the amount of children and parents you're dealing with at that time. That helps. All right, I want to just
That I will
Mark.
get back to
Yeah.
people
Thank you.
about it.
So I just want to Mark
two
wrap
things,
up,
two
and then
things.
we'll move into resident.
What he was talking about, so the applicant goes back to NYPD, the NYPD comes back and says, yeah, it's feasible, we can do it. They can do it, is of course going to say, you're in a car, you can't move. You want to cross the street, you can't go anywhere. So that's feasible from their point of view, but from community point of view and quality of life point of view, it's a disaster. So whatever they say is feasible is really irrelevant to us. The other thing, and Tammy, if we eliminate the inner streets, Church, Greenwich, Warren, all that, and make the route start and finish in Battery Park City, all those resources that were going to be used here can now be used right at the start and finish to maybe mitigate all that traffic better. Does that sound right?
Here's my crazy question.
I mean,
You have a World Trade Center site with fully shut down streets where there is no traffic allowed anyway. Why isn't any part of the site campus, north, south, east, or west, looked at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where you could
Start right here.
you can naturally line people up and have them run. So I challenge the race organizers to reach out and
So,
Part-
Mayor, so for time purposes, so first off, Devin has a question, so I just want to turn over to Devin for a moment.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for talking with us, for one. And I was just wondering, aside from NYPD, have you talked to any schools or any other community organizations or small businesses about, these street closures?
And we do reach out to schools in the area that we identify and send them flyers, emails if we can find their contact. We speak with parking garages that are affected so they can post a notice, because I know it definitely affects people getting in and out of parking garages in some locations. Those are the main people that we speak with.
School is over at 3 o'clock. We take over the schools at 3 o'clock.
So, so just going to wrap up here. So I think, Lisa, Nicole, you think you're kind of getting a flavor of the frustration a lot of folks in the room have with the route and kind of the agitas it's definitely causing with a lot of folks. And as Tammy just mentioned, we do think that there's an opportunity to relook at the route as a whole, especially with the World Trade Center site campus, with alternative routes, with ways that potentially you would be able to manage that many people, but in a way that really wouldn't have such a dramatic impact on the quality of life of our neighbors in Lower Manhattan. I'll propose a resolution and then tell me what folks think. I generally think that we're going to be proposing a disapproval of the application, not based on sort of the merits or that it's a good event, but that the fact that the route does have a dramatic impact on our neighbors and the folks we represent. We are going to note in the resolution that although NYPD does think that the route might be feasible, it may be feasible from their end. However, the fact that they do prevent our neighbors from either being able to just function or, as Nick said, be able to drop off their kids and things of that nature, it does cause a problem.
Residents and businesses.
Residents and businesses. We are also going to propose in the resolution that we strongly urge probably both you and the NYPD to redo a route, but also not just redo a route, but take a look at a route and just engage the community board much earlier before coming back to the community board next January for a potential approval of the application, just so these things can be kind of worked out in advance with the folks who may be impacted by that route. Looking to see if there's anything else.
And the interior streets are the most problematic during this time and day.
The other end that was actually brought up was
being closed. It
would be helpful for future maps when you do recommend closures that you make a note of the specific transportation closures in terms of public transportation, especially as it relates to accessibility. That's something that I think is it's sort of a major theme that we've been hearing over the past couple of weeks since you last came to the board. Is there anything else, Nick?
Just one last question, which is, where does CB1 end on the north side?
Brooklyn Bridge.
Brooklyn Bridge on the east side, Canal Street.
On the north.
On your side, the west side, yeah.
On the west side. So, would we be able to, as a community board, propose a route that started in a different community board and then ended in ours?
Theoretically, we could, yeah.
Okay, because that would be something that I would stress we should really look at, which is
In the Bronx.
there's no reason why we can't head north all the way east. And it doesn't always have to be on, if they're going to close a street, South Street is a great street to close. It's not like that is used. That's used as an off-run from the FDR, if anything.
So to that note, I mean, you heard a little bit about the World Trade Center site, given some of the closures that they already have there. Our neighbor also noted that maybe starting or working with us to maybe even starting a different community board and have the route even end in CB1. That's another alternative. We're not going to be able to litigate, the route right now. There are 100 different options, but I think we should definitely include in our resolution that starting a different part of the city and ending is something that should also be considered.
But Reggie.
Yeah.
So are you proposing this for next year, or what are we?
No. I think we're recommending disapproval now.
Okay. And
but
we
also
want these changes to take place this year, now, for May.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely can say that, ideally.
Okay,
But,
yeah.
The city, of course, as we all know, is probably going to say, that's nice, we'll consider for next year, but we should be firm in saying that we would like to have this happen as soon as possible.
I think it's important to state, this is the American Heart Association. This is not, friends of
Right.
something, right? And And the money that they raise is very important, so we have to work with them. I'm gonna abstain on the vote.
Yep.
I don't feel I have enough information.
So what we'll make sure to do
And if I'm
is,
inconvenienced a little, I don't mind.
so what we'll make sure to do in some of the whereases beforehand, we'll talk about the history of the race, the importance of the American Heart Association, services of the city, things of that nature. So it's clear that it's not a rejection of the applicant, but of their application. Betty?
I was going to comment that
Yeah.
I'm surprised the American Heart Association is very important. I get that. Why they're risking so much ill will from so many people walking under that banner at the most selfish time they could possibly do it is really kind of eye-opening to me. It's very disappointing that an association of that stature would be so
It's not a lot of
horrible.
ill-
It's because it's the Wall Street run, so this is all about all the Wall Street companies that participate, and it's done to be in the home of the Wall Street area, and while I get that really well,
Do it on a weekend.
the route needs adjustment.
So just not to belabor that we've spent a lot of time on this application, I hear what you're saying. Well, we'll make sure to make a note of that.
Call the question.
Yeah, so we'll call the question. So all those in favor of a resolution approving,
Reject.
disapproving the application with the different things we talked about? Okay. 1, 2, no. 5. Okay. All those opposed, abstentions? Okay.
One abstention.
Any recuse themselves? No? Okay, great. All right, thanks again for taking the time to chat on the phone, Lisa and Nicole. We'll make sure to be following up with you. And yeah, thanks again for taking the time on an evening.
Thank you guys very much.
right,
Appreciate
bye-bye.
all your comments.
Great, thanks, bye-bye. Thanks for coming, Nick.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
very much.
Is there any way to get back to Nick once we have more details? I mean,
Yeah,
so-
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Nick, someone will follow up with you.
Okay, so for our Pace University students, this is Democracy in Action. This is what communities do. Glad you guys could come. All right, so, oh, perfect, great. And Dana's going to pass around draft resolutions for these items. So we have Lindsay Owen, who's the program coordinator for government and community relations at PACE, and a number of student government students. So there are 2 items that PACE wants to talk to us about. The first is specifically signage at our local transportation hubs, specifically the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall subway stop, and then some of the student government members want to talk about Spruce Street safety. So I'll turn it over to Lindsay.
Well, I think most of the people who figured out was here last month when we talked about this. And
If you want to, even want to stand up or yeah, no, up to you.
and how we left it was, Pace, Vanessa and I are aware that MTA doesn't do the legacy stops anymore, which is the example of, like NYU has one, I believe on 8th Ave, and Fordham University has one. So we know that's not an option, but we're still looking for some type of acknowledgement in the downtown area in one of the subway stops. And it was discussed, approved, decided that the most appropriate is the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall station that's literally directly next to Pace's main campus building, which also was recently renovated. We just finished a phase 1 renovation process, and so the front of that building is almost completely renovated at this point. And so it would be a nice addition to the community. Acknowledging that we talked about potentially maybe artwork from the students, some type of mural or something that we hope to propose later on, which I know Diana drafted a resolution, and what she drafted looks great to us, so.
So generally the MTA, just on background, they require engagement with the community, a community board resolution, and anything related to signage. So Pace came to us, obviously, no, it's not going to be named the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, Pace University subway stop, obviously, but they, I think this is a good first stop. So it's a double-paged paper, so we can save paper, so that's why it says Spruce Street safety, turn it over. So anyway, this is the resolution specifically. This item. Yeah, the signage one. No. This is perfect. Yeah, yep, so perfect. So why don't we take a moment just to talk briefly about the subway signage resolution. All in all, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. I don't think there's anything.
Does the MTA have guidelines on this, not issuing secondary names, pamphlet or whatever?
When we've reached out to them in the past, because this is a question, this isn't the first time this has come up, essentially when any new VP is hired at PACE, this is one of their first questions, is why doesn't PACE have one? This is the first time we're working with Community Board 1 on this, to try to get some acknowledgement. Essentially, MTA after some point, I'm not sure what the last legacy stop name was, but at some point they said we're not doing this anymore. So.
Have you seen any memo or anything saying why and what the guidelines are to create one?
I think part
of.
of.
Is this just some? Was this some talking point from a PR guy?
I think one of the reasons why is because of all the subway renovation to begin with and the cost of it. I think if we were to get signage on the outside, number one, like PACE would be funding most of that, which with the renovations we're doing, we simply don't have the funding for at this point. Whereas if it was a type of like dedication, something, art related in the subway where PACE would be able to contribute that, maybe student artwork or whatnot, the financial cost wouldn't be so much a complete burden on PACE. So.
I would add to the resolution though that even we're recommending that, but that PACE University comes back to us with a presentation of the signage and the fonts and whatever it's going to be like before if it is approved by MTA.
Cool. Yeah, great. We'll add that. Anyone else on this specific item? No? Okay, so
design, that's the word, design.
Please come back with design. So we'll add that that sort of clause into the end that they need to come back for design. I think this is pretty straightforward at this point, so I'll just call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? None? Okay, great. Awesome. So now if we can flip your hymnals over to the back page, we'll now have Joseph Colella, is that the pronunciation? Oh, great. This is the student government president at PACE to talk about Spruce Street safety for a moment.
Hello, everybody. Coming here today to talk about a street crossing on Spruce Street, particularly directly between PACE University and the Spruce Street School and the back area of the New York Presbyterian Hospital. There's a crosswalk there that has 2 stop signs directly prior to it. It's marked in the road with the white paint that says stop, particularly right underneath that car. Regardless of the signage for the stop signs and the stop in the street, cars do not stop or even slow down, and very often there'll be trucks that are blocking the stop signs, sort of obscuring the view. So students that are crossing the street from PACE or the Spruce Street School, which is elementary school, and even people that you can see that are recently treated at the hospital, whether in wheelchairs or crutches, are crossing that street, and the cars that are coming down do not slow down. They'll blast through the crosswalk, particularly at night. We get a lot of people that are blasting music, driving straight down, and mostly what we get is a courtesy slowdown, sort of peek around, and then driving right through. So the solution that we researched to this initially was a speed hump, but after talking to New York Presbyterian Hospital, we realized that a speed hump, which is a bar that would essentially cross that whole drive area for the cars, would interfere with the ambulance's ability to get to the hospital if they have a patient in the back. So we did some more research, and from the Department of Transportation's traffic calming guidelines, they have what is something that is called a speed cushion, which is almost like a partitioned speed hump, where if you look at a regular car's width between the 2 tires, let's say it's length A. If you look at an emergency vehicle like a fire truck or an ambulance, the width between the 2 tires is wider than that of a car. So the width of the speed cushion, which is like a raised area on the street, would match that of the car, but would be more narrow than that of an emergency vehicle. So it would allow the emergency vehicle to drive straight through it without receiving any sort of jostling or bump.
Does that include garbage trucks?
Yes.
The same axle, because that's the ones when they go over those things, they're extremely loud, particularly the ones with the that pick up the bins, and the residents live there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, we did some small market research just to get some numbers. I think it's 2 slides in, or maybe 3. One more. There it is. particularly we listed the ambulances, but from this company they listed the wheel tracks, and which is the sort of nomenclature for the width between the two tires. And I think almost every vehicle that's not a sedan, like it's about 10 inches, 8 to 10 inches wider. So there's clearance, and for the garbage trucks in particular, those wheel tracks are also wider than that of a regular car.
Now, would there be signage painted on the street trucks? You know, use that route. Use the can fit in there.
Like a sign or painted on the street?
Both. I don't know. So you know, the trucks maybe they have one wheel on, one wheel off. It still causes noise. Will there be some kind of signage or indication that they can go through without going over the bump?
Yeah, in the traffic calming devices guidelines, when the Department of Transportation installs it, they also bring the appropriate signage. That's up to their legal code, essentially.
Yeah, so DOT has the entire long form process on this, but
Can we add that to the resolution with regards to signage and or on the pavement or regular signage indicating truck routes to avoid garbage trucks and other vehicles from causing noise and quality of life issues for the neighbors? I can word it better later, but that's the gist of it. I think you know what I mean.
Isn't there other hospitals? Because,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, an emergency vehicle's in sort of a rush. Now they have to be very careful how they're driving through, not driving. Are they near other hospitals?
I personally haven't seen any other hospitals in the city that might have them. But
You spoke to the hospital?
Yeah,
near
they were at our, they were,
Right.
New York Presbyterian was at our last meeting.
So there are.
yeah, and the Spruce Street School also had concern about this one
and
as well.
If I could
Yeah,
add
make
to
a good
that,
point, Kelly. Yeah.
When I've spent time like sitting down watching the crosswalk just because it's frustrating to me. I've seen ambulances, lights and sirens blasting down, and they'll come slow and they'll do the courtesy slow down because there is a crosswalk. So even if they're coming down, people might not notice the lights if they have a disability. So they do slow down, and I'm hoping that the speed cushion like accommodates with that.
Another thing you might want to recommend is a flashing red light.
On the stop signs? Yes.
And
That was one of the first things we looked into, and we
Those
discussed
usually
that
work.
with Senator Kavanaugh as well. The issue is that is one of like, I don't know exactly how to word it, but the flashing stop signs is one of like the most stolen items.
no, just have an actual physical light installed above. Yeah, flashing red light. Yeah.
That would probably be what we looked into if
so
this doesn't go through.
the city will probably say there's no, it costs too much, but
Right.
Yeah.
that's the best thing. You got a flashing light hanging
Put it on
above
the
it.
burner.
Yeah, so,
Patty?
As I said before, I'm against anything in the road. You can't legislate people, if they don't want to ignore a stop sign, they're going to ignore a stop sign. I mean, they know that's wrong. They know they could be ticketed. It's very difficult using a scooter like I have, where people keep making the roads worse and worse and worse for me to cross. It's absolutely horrible. I also live near a road that has texture to it, and the snow plows are hideously loud if you're worried about the people who live close by.
Yeah.
They're going to hear it
Yep.
over and over and
So
over
I don't like
again.
those things at all.
Or the plows aren't going to plow it, and they'll just let it ice over, so they can stop. It's bad on many levels, so I would not think it's a good idea.
So in this photo, you make a really good point. And when I looked at this photo again, I think what they were proposing was that it would go here,
Yes.
but then the crosswalk is actually it's maybe like 10 feet roughly ahead of it. So I'm hoping that would alleviate your concern in that, because I agree. Like if it was right in that crosswalk or even right before it, there's no way anyone's going to be able to get through, especially those who are using any kind of devices or assistive device to get across.
So it doesn't impact the crosswalk itself. It is prior to the
right
crosswalk.
before
It's more than you think. Go look at cooling pits. I mean, go to quality of life anytime. The road is used, not this clear little path, and it's going to get in the way. I deal with them all the time, and I don't go there because I enjoy doing it.
Right.
Is that the right turn into the hospital at the edge of where the orange?
It's all the way down, all the way down on Bolt.
Where the what do you call it is?
I thought the entrance to the hospital was on the other street.
Yes.
Yeah, close streets, past that truck. Make a right.
Right, but the ambulances don't come down this street, they come up the other one, don't they?
They may.
They can sometimes.
They
come
do
up.
both.
They do
Yeah,
both.
Yeah, we see ambulances.
But you know what's weird about this block? There's like 3 stop signs on this block.
Yep.
You make the turn, there's a stop sign, and then a stop
Right.
sign, and about another. So I think that cars, I know when I'm driving, I stop, and then I stop again. It's like I think there's a bit of an issue further on.
Yeah,
Stopping people from then stopping a third time, all in one block.
To me,
so
there are
is
too
this
many.
sort of,
There's too many stop
So
signs on that
That's
block.
the
Why
thing.
people are not,
I
There
don't know.
didn't used to be any stop signs.
I know, now there's 3.
So, yeah, it
is
was
this basically in lieu of rumble strips or any kind of changed pavement to encourage slower?
Yes. Yes, particularly because we looked through having those installed as well, the speed cushion device was like the most user-friendly for this, especially for having like the one car lane width. Having that installed, and like also want to reiterate that it would not be on the crosswalk or even past where, if you see the stop, I know it's obscured by the car in Spruce Street, but it would be before that. So this would not go into the crosswalk area or obscure the curb cuts on either side of it.
And does not go in the bike path either?
No, bikes wouldn't be. It would be within the 2 white traffic lines.
Is this the same street that the UPS man was killed?
The next one over, that was Beekman.
Very similar type of street, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So-
Beekman's,
I think this one's probably.
Beekman I think is a little narrower.
Yeah, but I am sure, and I've spoken to a couple of people, that the parents are enthusiastic. It's a very nice piece of research. I think we should give it anything we could do to slow down cars on that street should be done. And so I would, is this a graduate school project or?
No.
Undergrad.
Undergrad.
Yeah.
Undergrad. Definitely put the sign up at the subway. It's a very impressive piece of research.
Should we mention?
It's very thoroughly done.
Should we mention something about maybe there are too many stop signs there? Because that definitely frustrates drivers. They're like, oh, another one.
And they're
What I
not
will
gonna
say,
One.
on my own
adhere to
personal
the sign,
experience
yeah.
on that street,
When you get to the
I
last
cannot-
one, they don't stop.
I can't begin to express to you the amount of people that are crossing back and forth
Yeah.
throughout the day.
Yes.
It's intense.
Yeah.
So
You
that's
need it?
why.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
You-
that's
you
just
ha-
my own personal
I mean,
experience. but-
having driven a car down there,
Yeah.
it's a really good thing that there are so many stop signs because you can't actually go more or less 5 to 10 feet, and there's students darting out and back.
Yeah, especially 2
I
a.m.
mean-
coming from Ryan's. I mean, you guys can't. You know.
Oh, can we actually add this to the resolution? When you're in a crosswalk, don't look at your cell phone. Millennials, please tell
Actually,
your
no.
friends.
You're talking to the president of student government.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
can go back and say,
But if you hear a horn honking and you're in a crosswalk like this, that's me. Scaring the hell out of you to wake up and don't do it again.
That's right, Becky.
But Mark raises a good point. A lot of the issues, I watch this too, it is the pedestrians that are the real problem.
Yeah, they're part of
What are
it.
they gonna do to solve the pedestrian problem? Then they wouldn't have to worry about the cars. It's like
the
there are
age-old
3 lights
question.
already.
but you know
There
what?
are 3 stop signs.
Unfortunately, it's the law of gross tonnage. That's really what it ends up being. And
But
the
that's
key
why-
is, if you can't change pedestrians, then you have to provide the opportunity to slow the cars down enough that they, because they are the largest thing on the road at that place, are more careful. I mean, it would be great if everybody crossed a crosswalk, if nobody jumped a light, if there was no jaywalking, but that doesn't seem to be New York culture.
All right. So just for the sake of, I think we're in a good shape. I think we'll just add in a clause just that we request that that appropriate signage is there for especially sanitation or any kind of large vehicle.
Yep.
To make sure they're aware of it.
You have the flashing.
Yeah.
Call the question.
And
Good
the
luck
other
getting
item
this
is.
past DOT. I don't know if they would.
Yeah, we'll ask that DOT definitely. And the other item is we just want to make sure that, per Betty's suggestion, that it's not actually blocking the crosswalk itself, and that we have to keep cognizant of that. No, it's a really good point. Okay. All right, great. Call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, here, Mark abstaining. All right, great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Go back to class.
Nice job for everybody.
All right, e-bikes. Yay! All right, just for everyone's sanity on this. I'm gonna spend a few minutes just giving an overview of what the heck the council bills are. It should take no more than 3 minutes. This is a topic that we can easily talk about for a couple hours, but I don't think anyone wants to be here for a couple hours, and so what we'll do is, let me just quickly give everyone an overview of what was actually being proposed at the city council.
This is good because it's on my agenda for tomorrow because BPCA has their own rules.
Yay!
And I'm circulating some content
So
that we
my
reviewed
ideas are-
last month. The one that's stapled is some language suggested by Bob Townley, and the one that's bolded is Mark Immer's.
Did you take a look at what HRPT did for their resolution?
Yes, they were very concerned about the greenways especially,
Yeah,
and
they-
a lot of it actually overlapped with the comments that came from board members. Yeah, sure.
For you.
All right, great. Okay, so here's sort of an overview of the 4 council bills. The city council is focusing on scooters and e-bikes. So just as a point of reminder for everybody, electric scooters are 2 wheels. There's been press reports about Bird or Lyft and other companies that are investing in these electric scooters that could be not really docked, but you could pretty much just leave on the street, which is a separate issue in and of itself. So right now we have prohibitions in the city code regarding electric scooters, so that's why you don't see them heavily used, or if they are being used, it's probably illegally being used in the city. So what the bill does, it allows for electric scooters to be used as long as they don't exceed 15 miles an hour. It reduces the fines that are currently in the code about using scooters, and only motorized scooters that operate in a way that's quote-unquote safe, or that operate unsafely can be impounded, so it gives more discretion to NYPD. There's a concern by elected officials that NYPD is a little impound crazy with both e-bikes and with scooters, so it's to kind of give NYPD that level of flexibility, and that it also clarifies that those who are using e-scooters are subject to the same rules as those that are using bikes. That's one bill. The second bill is pretty much the same thing related to scooters, except related to electric bicycles. So right now, automatic electric bicycles, meaning anything that's not pedal assist, is currently banned in the city. It allows for the use of these electric bicycles as long as they don't exceed 20 miles an hour, and again, pretty much the same thing as the other bill. This one was an interesting one. It basically allows DOT to run a pilot program for electric scooters, and it was supposed to be focused on the areas where there would be an L train shutdown to help those folks who lived around the L train. We won't get to the politics of that, but anyway, that's sort of the basic gist of the pilot program bill. And then the last bill is a conversion program. So there are many individuals, especially delivery trucks, that are illegally using electric bicycles right now to help with aiding in deliveries. So it allows DOT to create a program, and they could do this as by themselves or with a public-private partnership to help those who currently have electric bicycles to convert to pedal assist electric bicycles. So anyway, that's sort of the general gist of it. And then these were just some general discussion questions, but I know a lot of folks here have thoughts, so we don't even have to.
Photos of what they look like.
I don't have those up, unfortunately. It's a scooter. It's basically a scooter with a motor that's built into it. Yeah.
Okay.
And the electric bicycles, I swear, just looks like a normal bicycle,
Yeah,
except it has a
like-
box.
It can have a box as small as this for an inch.
All right. So yeah, we'll go Tammy, then Mark, and we'll
So I have a couple of questions
Yeah.
on this, because my first immediate question is, when we're talking about this from a community board perspective, we have comment and jurisdiction over city streets and city ways.
Yep.
State DOT has separate rules.
Right.
I'd like to know what the existing rules are for state DOT, because if I remember correctly, the Greenway, at least as it applies from HRPT down through Battery Park City, is controlled by state
Yes.
DOT.
Totally. Yep.
So how do the rules and regs for what the city bills are match or do not match with what state DOT has existing?
So the short answer is there is not consistency in terms of a holistic. This is what the city and state rules are for all of the 5 boroughs, especially given the fact that, as you mentioned, the HRPT and even Battery Park are under state jurisdiction, so they could be promulgating rules that are different from the city. I'm unsure exactly for those areas how they differ, but one of the criticisms that we had last month about the bills is that there's no holistic approach by both the state and the city about how they would regulate it. So you could have an electric bicycle that is being allowed by the city, but the moment they enter the greenway on state property, they could be under a completely different set of rules, which confuses the heck out of both those who are using electric bicycles, but also confuses residents. So if you're comfortable right now on a greenway because you know that there's not an electric bike, you're suddenly going to get inundated with the fact that now electric bikes could be used unless there's parity between the city and state roads.
Is it hidden?
So there needs to be consistency. I mean, that's just not fair. I mean, to the to the people who are using these scooters and electric, it's just so what. Right now, you're saying there is no parity.
Correct.
So
which is the problem. I think that's the first.
We just have to address the city's legislation right now. That's really.
Well, not necessarily. Well, in the sense that, like when we talked last month, I think one of the things we had talked about was actually, well, maybe it was just me that was critical, but of the state. But it's clear that the city is not talking to the state, and the city is not talking to the city about how they're both going to handle this. It seems like they're kind of working on separate paths.
Ed Pinkard told me a couple months ago that, in fact, he was spending all his time working with the state, smoothing out.
So,
because the state is, anything 20 miles an hour or less is by definition a bicycle. So I'm not so sure that an e-bike makes any difference to the state. It does to the city, but I don't think the state cares. But I know that the DOT is working on that and has been for a while.
but we also, what we're waiting for from BPCA to come back to us on are what state park rules are on them, because that also can vary. Because Battery Park City in the bicycle working group said that they did not want e-bikes on the Esplanade, period. That the Greenway and the streetscape was where they wanted them. They didn't want them on the sidewalks, and they didn't want them on the Esplanade. Because right now the problem that we...
and they thought they were okay on the other paths, on the Greenway, or they didn't address it?
They didn't want them within the park itself, because it's not safe.
On the Esplanade.
On the Esplanade. They didn't want them in the parks because it's unsafe.
But how about on the other spots?
But if the city was promoting this, their thought was to the Greenway. However, according to BPCA, they believed they were still illegal on a state level. Therefore, then their recommendation and the recommendation for Battery Park City would be no, only on city streets and that's it. So that's kind of where the position we are. We're going to take this up tomorrow to be able to clarify and pass a resolution for in the parks themselves within Battery Park City, because that is not city property. That's Battery Park City Authority. But
when you say in the parks, you mean on the bike,
in the Esplanade from the point of
on
Rockefeller,
the Esplanade.
Rockefeller through Wagner.
Not on the bikeway.
So I apologize for my ignorance, but the fact that they're electric makes them significantly faster? What are we talking
If you're an
in terms of
individual,
mile per hour?
you can
Yeah.
ride 50 miles an hour if you are physically
You can?
capable. If you're physically
On a-
capable of running that,
Really?
if you're
Okay.
you can ride fairly quickly. But the electric bikes in general are
No,
significantly
I'm talking about the electric ones. Okay.
they are significantly heavier.
Okay.
And they are motorized. And so the concern is they are significantly less safe for pedestrians.
So if somebody, but they're not faster per se, they're just heavier.
Well,
No,
They are in general, they're faster.
They
They're both
accelerate.
faster and
They
heavier,
accelerate
yeah.
faster.
They accelerate faster, and plus
Stopping
not
is
to
different,
not to
yeah.
judge the health and fitness of those in the room, but I would bet that most people here on a day-to-day basis are not going automatically 20 miles an hour. Probably
No, that's like
have
a
that
racing.
speed.
Because these things can sustain the speed. But you know, when you're biking, as soon as you stop, you're slowing down.
Right.
This thing doesn't slow down. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, so
No, that's a great question. No, it's
Yeah.
not.
Okay.
That's a really good question.
that's the problem. You hit the nail on the head.
Sorry, Devin.
Yeah. I just want to say that I was in Charlotte like a month ago, traveling, and there were e-scooters on the streets. And personally, when I was walking down the sidewalk, one of the e-scooters, somebody was like riding it, and it went so fast that I didn't even realize that it was behind me until it was like a few feet away. So that's just an issue with like speed and.
Yeah, the sidewalk. Happened to me
Exactly,
yesterday.
yeah.
Some idiot behind me, right behind.
And I
It just
have,
blindsides you.
Yeah.
and the
What
other.
if you turn suddenly?
Right.
You're on the
And they're
sidewalk.
not
You
supposed
should
to
be
be at
able
the sidewalk, by the way.
you know?
E-scooters are not allowed. They have to operate.
They
as
always
safely
are
as
on the
possible.
sidewalk.
No, I agree. In practice,
Grown-ups
yeah.
aren't allowed to ride on the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah, they're just clarified. No one's allowed to ride on the sidewalk.
They'll just be worse.
But there just means there are more instances of people doing it.
So the average, if you Google like what's the average, in Europe it's much higher, but because they have dedicated lanes and things like that.
Okay.
And they say the average regular bicyclist rides 12 to 15 miles per hour.
Okay.
So an e-bike that accelerates like a car can
Yeah.
and goes 20 and is heavier,
Yeah,
just
okay.
all I could think of is,
Yeah.
kid, ball, bicycle, bad.
Plus, my impressions when I've been in Europe is they tend to, obey the rules of the road much more than
Yeah.
here, which is really the big difference.
That's something we need to take up in the future.
Yep.
Anyone else? Callie, did you have anything? Or Betty? No? Okay.
I mean,
And then Betty, actually, you made a lot of good points last month, actually,
No,
please.
I think a terrible misunderstanding of e-bikes and also how desperately bad pedestrians are. Trust me, being on a scooter, I see the worst of people all the time. They've knocked me into the street, they've done all kinds of things. I weigh less than most males do walking down the street. They can wipe me out completely. Have I treated people with broken necks because they were riding a bike and some stupid pedestrian walked in front of them? Yes, I have, and the person is paralyzed for life. They're a terrible risk, so don't think they're hitting these poor pedestrians who are standing there on their phones and walking around not thinking about what they're doing.
Yep.
It's everybody thinking, and if you look at what some of the people are thinking of now is, don't think about the device. Think about miles per hour, which I can tell you is ridiculously slow in the EU, which is why my scooter got down to a slower speed. They decided walkers and pedestrian areas should be limited to 4 kilometers an hour, which is ridiculously low, because you can't pick up. I mean, that's the maximum. Think about it, your car can never go more than 20 miles an hour, because in school zones, that's all you're allowed to do. So your car is never allowed to go faster than that. They did that, which was kind of crazy. Just because you can go fast doesn't mean you're going to go fast. Some will because they're stupid. Others will look at the conditions around them and moderate the way they should. They're no different when they're driving a car than when they're walking than when they're on their bicycle. They're not. It's no real difference. So maybe what we need to do is look at more the speeds allowed in different areas. And there are people who are proposing 3 different lanes. One being the sidewalks, and that be the pedestrian speed, and that being more like 3 to 5 miles an hour maximum is what you're allowed to do. Whether you're jogging, and this would be probably more like the Esplanade, whether you're going along in your bike or your motor vehicle because you have disabled like I am. And then saying we need another track, which are those people who can go up to 20 miles an hour. So now we can put in the people with the electric scooters, the electric bicycles. But those going more than 20 miles an hour, whether they're car or whether they're really exercising bicyclists, I can't keep up with my son by far when he's bicycling. And he's used to doing 25, 30 miles an hour.
Do you feel that they belong on the bikeway? On the greenway?
According to his other plan, they wouldn't, but do you think they belong on West Street? It's, pick the worst of the poisons you have.
I mean, that Spruce Street's 20 miles an hour, and these things will be going faster than that in a bike lane.
Well, they shouldn't be. Bicycles should be followed by New York State law, which New York City doesn't follow.
Right.
But if they did,
They're supposed to follow
whatever
traffic
posted
rules.
limit is should apply to every vehicle, whether it's a bicycle or whatever.
They're also supposed to stop at traffic lights and stop signs.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a wrong way down the street, all that stuff, and that's the problem.
Right.
It's just it's not like a few rotten apples. It's just exponentially a lot of bad actors, and then the attitudes with them. If you're on the bike, if a pedestrian has the right of way, pretty much all the time. There are exceptions, But if you're in a bike lane, they start screaming and yelling at you. You don't have the right of way, like they do. They're supposed to stop, and they don't. And just examples,
Yeah, and then the other item, just in terms of what was discussed last month, was enforcement, in the sense that it's tough for NYPD or DOT or any enforcement official to catch up to a bike that's clearly going way above the speed limit. So we have an enforcement issue, especially with bikes who just, for whatever reason, are going the wrong way. So there are a lot of different ways that we can approach a resolution on this if we choose to do one. Obviously, the consistency of the state and city rules is critical. I don't know if we want to talk specifically about the Greenway and requesting specific items of how the Greenway is treated different than regular streets. We'll obviously include clauses about a need to have better enforcement of the laws.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah, please.
Well, Bob had sent me a resolution like at the beginning of before last meeting last month, and then we bandied about back and forth, checking each other out on it, and so we kind of have. I think you can kind of combine our two. Mine is not necessarily a resolution per se. It is items that should be included in the resolution, whereases and issues like that. And I think it just go somehow combine both of these, and maybe tweak it a little more to be geared towards the city, but also mentioning the greenways, which we do. Might work. I think that might work.
Mark, I think the common theme that I think we agree upon, I'm curious to see how other people, we believe that e-bikes and possibly e-scooters should be registered. We believe that they should be speed limited. We believe they should be banned from parkways and greenways. When I was in undergraduate school, the teacher said, name me a law that is a good law that everybody does, and I responded, traffic lights. This is, we don't have, it's complete, it exists now, it's complete chaos now. And I just want to say the political reality is, there's big money to be made. At our last meeting, a lobbyist for the e-scooters sat in on our meeting. Now, they're nice people. I believe e-bikes, e-scooters should be in the it should go in the streets, and they should be registered. I think it's a good form of transportation, just like, what's that, the Vespas. But they are that heavy, they are that fast, and they should be registered, they should be insured, they should be speed limited, and they should be kept away from the bike lanes. And that's what the Community Board 5 letter sort of gets to, which I don't think is here, and they lowered the speed limits to 12. So, is there anyone who, I'm just going to, Reg, I'm going to just try to move it, so
please,
I got a chicken on the stove. Is there anyone that disagrees with those 4 principles?
Betty first, and then I'll go.
I do. I think the law says 20 miles an hour, and that's pretty standard, and that's consistent with New York State law of what bicycle is. So going to 12 miles an hour is,
Okay. How about registration of these vehicles?
Registration, I understand from Ed Pinkar, is dependent on what the state law is. So I'm going to stay away from that because the state regulates it, and I have no say. So
but we could have a say as we advise.
We should.
Right.
I don't particularly care. I mean, you can put on the bike, but a lot of them are going to be used as bike share anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
But then the owner of the bike share would be responsible for who's on that bike. There's a link to the bike. There should be a link from the restaurant. The restaurant may own the bike, the e-bike, but they are registered. You can't have just people, drug dealers, terrorists, riding around on e-bikes.
Bob.
But to ride.
I get political there.
No, okay.
Okay, but here's a funny question. You have to have a.
Well, I just want to say, it's the same thing. Is that saying it's for poor people delivering food?
Yeah, they play the harp strings on this nonsense.
It's not true. That's
Betty, sorry, last point.
I have a concern too, because again, if you look at a lot of the scooter shares and those, you use your driver's license. A large percent of millennials, and I'll speak up for my son and most of his friends, do not have driver's licenses. They have never had a driver's license. They're not going to get one to ride a bike or a scooter. So I'm not sure in New York City that's a very viable solution. there can be something else, but I understand it's also limited by the state, so.
But there's motorcycle licenses, it's not
Yeah, I
necessarily.
mean, they have to obey the rules of the road, you know, how do you learn
I'm
that?
only saying, I'm calling for driver's ed in my resolution and registration of the vehicle. I'm not calling for them getting a license. But if people want to put in a license, the more the merrier, but I'm not calling for a license to get all these bicyclists licensed. That's not gonna be practical, but I tell you what, in a perfect society, that's what we would do.
Okay, Betty, and then I have one point, and then
Right,
we'll try to
but
move
that's why I
on.
brought it up, is
Yeah.
because many of these Lyft and Yelp Lime and those require to get through the process that you use a driver's license. So the fact is, when speaking to
Yes.
all of those existing groups, I would say that is not a very viable solution for New York City. There are so many people who do not get driver's licenses, and I don't want them to have driver's licenses. We may have to find another solution to that.
Just, yeah, sure, and the items that you brought up, Bob, I mean, I largely agree with you, although I will say that for greenways, for those who have limited mobility, the idea of actually having an e-bike is actually incredibly helpful, where they can ride the bike with the kids, which I know that's one. I had the same view as you, and until I heard that from a friend of mine, and was
That
like,
what,
okay,
on the greenways?
yeah, just like if you have kids riding on an esplanade, and the kids are riding on their bikes, the parent wants to, but let's say they are either in a wheelchair or have mobility issues or can't even really pedal. Actually, it's something that almost normalizes their life. I will say that was an interesting point I never thought of, and I just want to put that out.
I mean, you can't drive a car if you have a mobility, if it's certain physical limitations, and you have to have the car adapted for the physical limitation.
Right.
So
in the same way an e-bike would adapt
you can't
a bicycle.
grant, because of this exception, you can't change the rule. If the rule, and people are pretty, we were pretty at the advisory council, long discussions on this going back 3 years. We think it's very, very dangerous to have things, I mean, if you said the speed limit was 15 regardless and you could enforce it, you could put e-bikes, but there's a reality that you can't limit them, so we don't want them at all.
Gotcha. And then the other item just on e-scooters, I'll say just personally, if e-scooters were permitted in the city, I probably wouldn't use the subway. I would actually get on an e-scooter and go on the bike lane, as crazy that is in a suit and shoes like this, but I would do it.
So I'm cool with that too, but would you like the e-scooter, the owner of the e-scooter to be identified?
Yeah,
would
I think
would you be opposed
yeah.
to speed limits on the e-scooters?
No, not at all, not at all.
Right, okay, so I think we're in agreement.
Yeah. All right, so what can we do to wrap this item up?
So
in terms of-
can I
Not
ask,
opposed to the technology.
for the whereases and be it resolved that I propose, does anyone have any objections to that, or want to
Where
modify
are
the
they?
language? Should be one page,
It's the bolded.
this one.
Yeah,
I have another one.
The other thing too is the NYPD does not keep statistics on pedestrian, bicycle injuries. Fatalities they will, but accidents they don't.
And I would just say there was a study done in Europe that when there were accidents between e-bikes and pedestrians, the injury is 25% higher. The injury rate is very high. And that was a study from our thinking brothers from across the Atlantic.
So I'm one of these folks that thinks that electrified belongs on the street, does not belong on our sidewalks, does not belong in the parks. The greenway is a harder thing. I think if you are somebody who requires a electrical scooter for ADA reasons, right? I think that's a different thing.
Yeah,
and I
agreed.
think that should not be lumped in with the rest of the rules, because if Betty wants to be on the Esplanade with her kid riding a bike, that's a different situation. But if you're on your suit, on your electrified scooter, you do not belong on the Esplanade. You belong in a transportation lane.
Yep, that I agree with you.
I'm just
So,
not clear.
I'm not
what you're
clear.
saying.
I'm not clear on how to. I mean, if we had enough bike lanes in New York City,
No, which we don't.
which we don't, then e-bikes and e-scooters belong in those lanes, period, end of statement. The question I have and the problem that we have with the greenway in specific is, quite frankly, in Lower Manhattan, it is the right way for electric scooters and electric bikes to go, because it's not safe for them on West Street anywhere. and that's what the bikeway is for. But once you get up into HRP area, that is a pedestrian-dominated area, and it is not safe to have them. So I'm really in a
So the bikeway, which is controlled by state DOT, has tremendous accidents on it.
It does.
By just bicyclists and pedestrians.
Yep.
Yes,
And the
agreed.
amount of times that I'm on the pier and I see ambulances called with just bikes, and then at night, if you go out there now, you will see it will become a highway of e-bikes at fast speeds. So
No regulation on lighting or
I
signaling.
would defer again by stepping on the toes of the advisory committee, which has considered this for a long time, and I would then concentrate on what the other issues are in other places.
And could we put in here that, we request that anything that's electrified must comply with lighting, horns, the things that you're supposed to have when you ride a bike, but need to be really.
That's a good idea.
They need to have lights that are on and operate like a moving vehicle does. They need to operate under the same rules and regulations as all moving vehicles.
Aren't bicycles supposed to have a light and a bell?
Yes.
I think by law.
Yes.
And nothing else though, right? Brakes, right?
Yeah. Could you put the last slide on the income guided program? I find that very, as a person who the last legislation.
Oh, on the blue ones.
The enacts program for conversion program, that low-income individuals with the conversion of a throttle operated device to assist pedal-assisted
It's
bicycles.
basically to make the illegal electric scooters into pedal assist. That's really what that is.
Is that what to make?
The current illegal bikes to be legal. That was on Margaret, I think, was the prime sponsor.
I think sometimes government gets in the way of itself.
Sometimes?
Sorry, just to move it along, guys. I'm sorry. I know, and someone's got a chicken on the stove, so I want to keep it moving.
I appreciate
I hear you.
it.
Okay, so
what do you think, Reggie? What do you like? What you don't like?
No, I think all in all, this is a good resolution. I would on the second whereas, I would just delete the word "very."
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to be too dark and dreary here.
No worries.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with the whereas the illegal e-scooters and e-bikes will exponentially increase the dangers to pedestrians throughout the city. Exponentially, I think there's a way to.
Can you say just could instead of exponentially?
Yeah, that's
could.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, we'll again just try to not make it as dark and dreary.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
That's all.
That's why it's a draft.
The second to last be it resolved now. The second to last one. Any legislation removes prohibitions on these vehicles, including they are not allowed on bikeways and greenways. I think they should be allowed on bikeways. I don't agree.
No, it has to say dedicated. It should not be on shared, any kind of shared.
So they dedicate.
So there's a description that DOT uses, and it should only be allowed in, the
dedicated bikeways. That works.
Dedicated. Okay.
Yeah, and I would specifically put on there not shared.
Okay.
Mark, when you ask for the statistics, these are the statistics that DOT keeps, and it comes from NYPD. Is there anything specific that has been missing from the data?
Let's see. So what do they have now?
This is crashes involving
pedestrians and bikes.
Cyclists.
So they do keep it now.
Yes, they're required to.
They must have just started.
So
then
315 citywide
so take 1, 2, 3.
pedestrian
Take out the fourth whereas.
I saw 315 myself.
And wait, you might have to modify it to be resolved.
Yeah, I think those numbers are woefully low, unless that.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. Maybe I was thinking that they didn't
that
used to, and now.
This is only reported statistics, so it's going to be skewed from the reality.
And
but
if that first be it resolved isn't true, then we'll take it out. But in the meantime,
we can change it to better accurately reflect the reality of the situation.
Okay.
And by the way, according to state parks, anything that is
Diane has
anything
this on her email. She'll send it to you.
that is not powered by muscle is considered a motor vehicle.
Even pedal assist.
Where?
According to state park rules, anything that is not powered by muscle,
Oh, okay, that makes pedal assist is powered.
Human
That's
assist,
fine.
human
So that's fine.
power.
pedal,
That's why they're not legal.
and they are illegal.
Yeah, human power.
All right,
I
I
think
think
this
we're,
is-
I think we're in good shape.
So I don't know which you're working off of, this
Yeah,
shorter one.
yeah.
And are we,
We incorporate both.
aren't we doing this
Well,
one?
it's okay, because we.
Is there
mark
preamble?
it,
Bob's.
So
Come
I
back
had
and forth, it's fine.
I thought I'd like to add,
So Bob has like the first couple whereases.
I'd like
Work
to
at
add
the
Yeah,
Bob's,
beginning.
yeah.
You can
We'll
start it
incorporate
out
that
and then
in.
put that and like just cut and paste everything.
And no offense, but I do like a lot of the things that HRPT put in because of the bollards, and we can't get away from that.
But the political reality now is that we don't have to address the Greenway right now, because we testified at the city council hearings. I think we can, if we want, but just politically, we need to address the legislation on the streets of the city of New York.
Yeah, yeah, totally. All right, so Dana, we're just quickly talking, just to move this along, we'll combine the different
Good
course.
luck.
Yeah, we'll circulate to
Thank you,
everybody, but just for the sake, because we have a quorum for the first time ever in transportation, so I wanna just
There you
vote
go,
on this.
before someone
I think we
cuts out
could
that chicken.
just generally conceptually agree with the changes that were made. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Any recusals? None? Okay, great. Before everyone goes, the very, very, very last item, this is gonna take 1 minute, 1 minute.
No, we have a few more, I'm sorry. We have to review
Oh.
the staple applications, and you need to give an update on
what?
the co-naming working
Okay,
group.
I'm gonna, okay. On this, no, again, the safe applications, the safe applications don't require a resolution.
Is there another resolution?
Yeah, so we'll, no,
Did we
the,
vote on this yet?
John and Ness.
John and Nassau, this one's literally gonna be 30 seconds, I
Hold
promise.
on, did you take the vote on the bike?
Yeah, we just did.
Okay, thank you.
So really quick, this is John Street, this is Nassau Street. There's currently a stop sign here on John Street, however, on this corner here, there's no stop sign, plus there's usually trucks on either side blocking it.
I know
So DOT just needs us to approve a resolution saying we would like to see a stop sign there, or for them to look at it.
Call the question.
It's an easy
All those in
one.
favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? None? Okay, great. The last item that Dana talked about was SAPE application. So just some background on this, so we're now taking a more active approach as it relates to SAPE applications, since a lot of this stuff is moving to the Transportation Committee. There's a packet that Dana will share with you that includes the SAPE applications that are kind of in the hopper for the next 6 months.
The whole year.
Okay, but we won't do it the entire year tonight.
We just need to identify the ones that have been problematic, people that we need to bring back in. So most of these, I think, are okay, and we've been listing them.
Did
Does
you
everybody
check,
have one?
did you check
Oh, we
with,
need a few
Well,
here.
I think, and we have to go through the prior year's resos on each of these.
yeah,
There aren't resolutions on each of these events because we've only brought in applicants that have been very problematic in a way that we can think we can help mitigate. A majority of them, I believe, we've listed just as informational and taken no action on.
Okay.
So to avoid what happened last month with just, missing that there's a huge problem with the American Heart Association, we need to identify which of these we want to bring in and speak to them and do a resolution on.
but there was a reso on every single one of these, I think.
No, there wasn't.
No?
So we just, do you need, just the event name is?
Did you, by the way, did you send this to Pat Moore?
Yeah.
She's big on this.
So
Yeah, all the Liberty ones are a problem.
Yeah.
So just for everyone's time purposes, we're going to cut off any conversation tonight through June. So basically, that's really just the first couple of applications.
Oh, thank God.
We'll take a look at July for next month and July is the rest of the year. But it's just so the first one is the Bloomberg Square Mile Relay. I don't think we did a resolution on this one in the past. It's kind of happened. It's literally right around the Seaport area.
What's the location?
Cal, I don't know if you're familiar with this one.
Oh, I'm sorry, say that again.
The Bloomberg Square Mile Relay, so it's
I think they moved
it happens in the
downtown.
Seaport area. It's just it's all contained in my experience, so it's fine.
You know what's kind of funny? You know what I think you're missing? Unless I just didn't get it.
Maybe we should
Um,
do that with them, because we've
Yes,
so many.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
really quick, guys, there's the Bloomberg Square Mile Relay, which we don't have any prior
Tunnels,
complaints
towers.
on. There's the Downtown Independent Democrats Liberty Street Festival,
Single block.
which is on May 3rd. we're not aware of any issues on that one.
No, and I don't think we did a resolution
And we didn't
on
do a
that last
resolution on
year.
that last year, so.
So the Bloomberg one, is this, I apologize because I'm catching up. It's 600 people, is it new?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It's not new.
So all of these are
Previously.
not new?
Are there,
Is it
just,
1,000?
can you send those down,
Oh, look,
Callie,
they-
the extras?
Oh, sorry about that.
Diana, are any of them new?
Said till
To go to Liberty
June,
Street.
Reggie?
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
flip
So
through,
transition
and it
road.
does say in those questions
Just get
at the
more.
end, it should say whether or not it's happened in the past.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Not too many jumped out to me as new, because I think SAPO is only taking applications
On
for
ramps, yeah.
full street closures like this. I think they're only allowing things that have already been grandfathered in. It's
So
a very closed system.
Liberty Street for the DID is, if I remember correctly, Liberty Street has construction on it right now?
Yeah, Liberty is a big problem
Right.
area. There are
So-
many events there.
Way too many.
Right, so we need to take a, anything
We'll
that,
take a look.
anything that affects Liberty Street
Yeah.
in between Broadway and Greenwich kind of needs to be taken a look at, because even though it's closed off with the spikes and things over by the Ten House, there's construction there, so.
Okay.
So we'll take a look at that one. All right, we'll take a look at the Downtown Independent Democrats item. The next one after that is
Yeah,
American
they-
Heart
they-
Association, which we
They
touched
stay
on.
Rip it out.
Let them stay there.
I mean, think about,
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 25th annual Taste of Tribeca.
so
That's
here's,
on the weekend though, right?
that's what I'm
Yes.
actually looking at.
Right.
It's the weekend,
Yeah.
yeah, 16, 17, it's
Yeah.
Saturday. So the other thing that we want to take a look at is maybe if we had like a calendar that like we put SAPO stuff on. And the only reason why I say that is because our experience in Battery Park City is we get overrun and you just have the community miserable after like 6 runs in 2 weeks. So that's something, when I look at this, the Taste of Tribeca, we love, it supports everything local, but it's 2 days after and they'll be crap.
So with transportation alternatives, they're staying downtown, right? They're staying in Liberty.
Yeah,
They're gonna-
that application is
No,
in
don't be
there.
sorry. It's
We're
somebody.
scared them away from.
It'll be much shorter for future
But,
event
but we
process.
should look at it anyway, we should.
Yeah.
Andy wants
I'll bring
to look at
cupcakes next
anything
time.
on Liberty Street, right?
Yeah.
You do a good job.
Because they were problematic previously,
I would
we
say-
should just,
Mark and I.
transportation alternatives, just as a caution.
Yeah, that one,
Yeah.
that
we
was one of the
we should
problem
check,
ones.
even though they go
Yeah.
move downtown.
Yep.
I don't know if you
I would say
remember that
bring-
one.
yeah.
I do remember.
Yeah.
Which is also the World Trade Center Community Fair, because it's broad,
Changed my opinion.
no, that's fine, that's Broadway between Liberty
Yeah,
and.
they were the #1 lobbying group against the term limits against community board members. They insert themselves where they shouldn't. insert.
Yeah, they're a very radical organization.
Well,
They
they've
pretend not
changed
to
over
be.
the years. I
They
worked
pretend
with
not to
them
be.
when they would, I worked with
A long
them.
time ago, they were good,
Is
but.
there any other, does
Or
anyone here have any other
decided to
ones?
Become a big organization.
Anyone have any other items that, Tammy?
I
Oh, no.
think, no.
Deepavali is one that we've brought in the past, but it
That's-
seems to have been okay.
That's
Yeah.
later in the year though, right?
Later in the year, I just wanna know what's coming.
Well-
Romania Day Festival we brought in before, but I think that's been okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think they're.
Alright, cool. Alright, and then for July through the end of the year, we'll do that for another meeting.
take your packages home, for
I
some
know,
nighttime reading.
actually,
So
knowing that not everyone here is actually going to do that, feel free to provide the packets back and we'll have it for next month.
That's all,
I am-
yeah, that's
I am-
also,
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
just admit that I'm not.
There you go.
I wouldn't if I wasn't paid.
Alright, is there any other business, oh, the other last item is street
phone
co-namings.
Yeah.
Just a heads up, everyone who expressed an interest in it, God bless them, they're all gonna be on the task force.
Is
We're-
this all because of what happened with the with that NYPD
There's
guy? Okay,
there's that,
yeah.
and we have another issue, which is that there's been an application that's been waiting since November. That's been
He was
held
here
on.
at the last meeting.
Yeah, and he's a great guy. I mean, they want to
Really
name
nice.
a street by the first precinct in honor of well,
Ben
he was-
Ward.
Yeah, Ben Ward. He did a lot of great things as a police
Okay.
commissioner, but he's also the first African American police commissioner. I'm going to keep.
Ben Ward.
Yeah, so we need to figure out as a board what we want to do about street meetings in the future. but
No,
also
my
just
father
clean up
worked
the
with
current
him.
Right,
guidelines.
so
They're in the same
whatever
administration.
happened with that NYPD
It got
controversy?
denied.
Got
and-
denied?
and-
I'll tell you a
Are they
story
still
what he did.
pushing? No, I know
They-
we denied
yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
are they still pushing it on?
Like,
a-
they're
on
still
a level?
reporting, so.
The
Oh, are
Margaret
we
asked us
done? I'll
to-
turn off the recorder.
Yes, we're all done.
Okay.
Yeah,